Whether it's a square or a circle, the head, and what I mean by that is the skull, is theoretically or mostly about a 1-to-1 ratio height to depth, so front to back and top to bottom, and about 2/3 as wide, right? And what happens is that if we think about that being divided into 4 quadrants, the skull with the jawbone tends to inhabit 3 of those quadrants, right? And that this is the neck. So one of the first things that I do is just pull down that neck, and it allows me to have a little handle. Okay? So we're going to think about the facial plane next, and what I want to do is essentially cut right, and I'm going to end up with a stripe down the middle. It's roughly 1/3, maybe even 1/2, but something like this. So between the top of the head and the bottom of the head, the eyes tend to be halfway, right? Which may look a little low, but it's not, because when you go to make the eye socket, when we do this on bigger heads, we stick our thumb in, so you can stick the tool in and pull the sockets like that. Okay. Think about wearing a pair of binoculars. When you wear the binoculars, you kind of tilt them down. It's because your sockets run a little high to low, inside out. And then the nose is going to be about halfway down from the top of the brow ridge. Right? So I can take another little bit of clay, or I can steal it off the back of the neck. And the great thing is that the nose actually starts here, right? On males, there's usually a little more of a dip, and it's not a dip, it's because our male skulls tend to have higher bony protrusions here. That was really clear on Adam, right? And me, right? Like, that's really deep, but it's not because my eye socket's deep, it's because that's big. And on female noses, that tends to run a little more shallow, right? Like, yeah. Lizzie's a good example of that, right? It's because of this Cro-Magnon, like, don't get punched in the face thing is just, it's not as pronounced, right? So it's kind of an easy way, playing with how that nose works is kind of an easy way to, play with the sex of the head you're making a little bit, right? If you want. So, nose, right? And then what I want to do is start to create the nasolabial fold, which is the smile line, and I'm doing that just by rolling it out. And I can sweep this to become the cheek. Right? The mouth is about 1/3 of the way down. I start about half, and then you're just going to angle up. And then the lower lip, you just squeeze in a little bit and shove it up to make the lower lip. And how that works, right, you can just play with it to make all kinds of mouths. But the idea is that upper lip is a plane that's facing this way, right? It's not a line. It's like a mustache that goes out and then back in. Okay. The deeper you cut those lines, like the older your figure feels. And then so for the eyes, right, if you want a little indication of eye, I will show you 2 ways. One is to just take a little ball of clay and stick it in there, back into the tool, and you can just flatten it, right? And just that flattening will kind of set the sense of an eye being in there. Or you can essentially do the same thing, but then loop the other end of the tool under it and bring it forward. And that can give you a sense, a kind of like more expressionistic sense of there being like an upper lid and a deep well bone, right? So you can kind of, this is two general ways to start to create eyes. On the cheekbone side, what we want to do is have that cheekbone run around right here. And then this is called the parietal lobe, this flat spot. And I'm just going to sweep that up like this. Right? See how I separated like the parietal lobe up here from the top of the cheek? And this is all looking really robotic and pronounced, and that's because at a small scale, like if I was to see this across the room at this scale, I want to like see it and go, whoa, and like walk across, right? If I make it all super subtle and no hard edges, it's just going to disappear with lighting and distance, right? So I just kind of keep everything sharp and generalized. And most of the face, right? Most of the face is really about working this way across the form. Like I don't ever want to put, besides maybe when I make the sockets, I don't ever want to put the tool straight in. I always want it moving across the form. Right. So what's super fun is now that we have this thing all in the right place, we can do stuff like this. Ah! And make them scream, right? Because if you get all the bits in the right place and right relationship to each other, like form-wise, you can do all kinds of things, but it still like has the sense that it's like a natural head, right? So we're just practicing making these robotic kind of faces, and then right here's our test. If I smash the nose and the lips, do I still see the side? You know, and that tells us about that roundness. I don't want you to smash them, but right. The other thing you're going to want to think about, just in general, when you make it, is figure out a way that it stands up, because then you can use these as test tiles for your glazing, and you can learn a lot by glazing that little head.